Hi, this is Trey Passer. Mr. Nightmare uploaded a video the other day called Three True Scary Horror Stories, so I'm going to react to those. So let's about 15 minutes. Let's get my reaction to it. I'll be right back. Okay, let me put my headphones in. And here we go right now. Go. Three random true scary stories. Story 1.
I was home alone one night during winter break. I was watching TV in our sunroom, which is like a smaller living room type space, which we use as a TV and movie room.
Okay.
There was also a door to the side driveway in this room. I had all the blinds shut and was under a blanket watching some random movie I don't even remember when out of nowhere the lights turn on outside. We have a motion sensing light out there, so the fact that it turned on was concerning. I had to lower the volume on the TV to listen up for any possible sounds. It was unlikely I'd hear anything from outside though, so I lifted the blinds briefly just to do a quick check. It was clear. There was no way that I know of to shut off that light, so as annoying as it was, I just had to wait.
Oh boy.
I figured it was a raccoon or a possum or something that might have triggered the light. Though the more I thought about it, the less that made sense. So I put on my shoes and just walked around the driveway to ease my mind. No one was there, so I could go back to watching TV with a clear head. Some time passed, and I suddenly heard a bucket full of something fall over outside, and then the motion sensing light turned back on. The first time it happened, I was concerned, but now I was straight up scared. Someone or something was out there. I was hoping it was an animal, but I really started to doubt it. I didn't want to get up because the couch was actually the only blind spot from the door to the side, and I had a fear of getting up and seeing somebody standing at that door. I wanted to shut the TV now, but the remote was in the middle of the coffee table, and I was afraid to even move that much. I looked to the blinds, which were fully pulled shut. However, I wasn't looking at the blinds. I was looking at what I saw through the blinds. There was a perfect outline of a person standing on the other side, with their arms stretched out a bit from their body. I don't know how to describe in writing how I felt in that moment, but there was an intense feeling in my heart and stomach area, and I felt like it was harder to breathe. That's how scared I was. I got up from the couch as quietly as I could, but before I could even get to the door that separates the sunroom and the dining room, the person on the other end started knocking aggressively on the window. I wanted to scare them away somehow, but I was too scared to go out there, so I screamed in a shaky voice, "I'm calling the cops." I stood by the doorway for a second to see if they stopped, and they did. But I saw the shadow beyond the blinds move towards the door, and I saw some old, crazy-looking woman with wiry hair on the other side of the door. For a moment I felt less intimidated, until she started banging on the glass of my door with both hands, screaming as if she were mental. I slammed the door to the sunroom and called 911. I reported some crazy, mental old woman attempting to break into my house. I was told to wait in a safe locked room with a weapon to defend myself until the police arrived. Any nightmare I ever had about a break-in came true when I heard glass shattering outside of the bathroom. I waited a minute after not hearing anything to slowly and quietly unlock and open the bathroom door.
Why?
I peered into my living room, and there she was. The old woman with the wiry hair, standing in the middle of my living room in front of a broken window. She spotted me when I had the door open and came rushing over to the door. I screamed like the scared 17-year-old I was and slammed the door shut again. The old woman started knocking on the door and wouldn't stop. She was saying things under her breath on the other side, and I couldn't make out any of it. I was too busy crying and begging her to go away. I finally heard a bang at the front door, so I opened the bathroom window and screamed help. 2 cops came up to the window I was screaming through, and I begged them to crawl through the broken window out back. They assured me they'd be okay and they'll be right here. The knocking at the door stopped, and a sudden commotion was taking place outside. I heard the 2 cops scream at the woman to step away from the door. When I stepped out from the bathroom, the 2 cops had the insane woman detained. I'd imagine they did it pretty easily. The woman looked at me with a look of crazy in her eyes, and I looked away. It turned out the old woman lived in a nearby house with some woman who never leaves the house. None of the neighbors ever really see her. The old woman was messed up in multiple ways and belonged in some kind of special care place. My parents pressed charges on the younger woman because they felt as her supposed caretaker, She should have been held liable for allowing a mentally disabled person to break into someone
True
else's
that.
house. Sadly, my parents lost the
Ah.
lawsuit, but the old, crazy woman was out of our neighborhood at
Oh,
the very
okay.
least, and was put in some kind of treatment
Yeah.
center.
Jesus. Definitely scary. Story number 2.
I own a small house on a big property in the rural part of New
Okay.
York, and I go up there a bunch of times a year in the winter months to go skiing. There's a neighbor up there that I'd never spoken to
Okay.
once. There's a fence that separates our 2
Okay.
yards. Then on the other sides of my house is woods for miles. There's another neighbor further down the road, across the street, and I'd met him a number of times because he happens to go skiing too, so we got to know each other based off that. I went up this past January for the first time in the season. As I walked up to the front door, I heard a kid laughing nearby in the neighbor's house's direction. I figured they had kids, which was
Okay.
news to me. Stepping into the house for the first time each season was always weird. A house that would be empty for a majority of the year, so I'd have to turn on the water and heat and everything,
Okay.
of course. The first night, I slept like a baby after the 4-hour drive from Connecticut. The next morning, after eating breakfast and changing into my ski gear, I went outside and found a big red ball sitting in the snow on my front lawn. It wasn't there the day before, so I assumed it belonged to the
Okay.
neighbors. I took the ball and threw it over the fence separating our
Okay.
properties. Then I went off to the ski lodge to meet my friend, and we spent the day skiing. When I got back, it was dark out. I'd eaten dinner with my friend, so I was ready to go
Okay.
to bed. Walking to the front door, I noticed that once again, that big red ball was sitting on my front lawn.
Okay.
Now it was getting a bit odd, but once again, I threw that red ball over the fence. I woke up in the middle of that night to laughing outside. A kid's laughter. It was like 2 or 3
Okay.
a.m. A kid playing outside made no
Exactly.
sense. I went to look out my window. I couldn't see any kids though, and now the laughter had stopped.
Okay.
However, I did see something sitting on my front lawn. I couldn't tell from the window, so I went outside into the snow in my slippers
Okay.
and robe, and saw that red ball once again sitting in
Man,
the
somebody's
snow.
messing with you.
I got chills as I saw it in the same spot once again. I took the ball, and this time instead of throwing it over
Yeah.
the fence, I brought it inside
Okay.
my house. I went back to sleep, not hearing any laughter outside again
Okay.
that night. The next morning, before going skiing again, I walked over to the neighbor's house, knocked on the door, and finally introduced
Okay.
myself. Surprisingly, he was an elderly man who seemed completely
Okay.
innocent. I questioned the child's laughter I kept hearing, and the ball that kept ending up on
Yeah.
my lawn. He told me there were no kids around there. I got chills again. I thanked him, shook his hand, and went back to my house. I left the red ball in my
Okay.
living room, then drove back up the mountain and had another day of skiing with
Okay.
my friend. When I got back to the house that night, I was completely exhausted and ready to go home the
Okay.
next day. I threw all my stuff on the couch and figured I'd pack it all up tomorrow. I literally crashed into the bed as my whole body was sore, and I fell asleep like
Okay.
a baby. Except I woke up to a kid's laughter outside again.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped out of bed and ran to the window to look outside.
Oh, come on.
There was the red ball, sitting in the snow
Ah,
again.
come on.
I ran to the living room and tore the room upside down looking for the ball. I still know to this day I'd left it in there when I left. But it wasn't there
Now,
now.
maybe you do got a ghost now.
I suddenly didn't feel alone
You
in
do
the
got a
house.
ghost.
I turned on every light as I packed up all my wet gear into my bag. I threw everything in the bag so I'd be ready to go if shit hit the fan. I made sure all the doors and windows were locked, and they were, so it made no sense. I left the lights on and went back to my room, shutting off only those lights. I looked out the window, and far behind the red ball, out in the snow, was what looked like a kid.
Oh,
A kid just standing stiff, looking towards my
oh
window.
God.
I ducked down and closed the blinds.
Maybe that
Closed
is.
the blinds to every window in my house. I tried my best to just go to sleep and ignore it. It was a long hour before my exhaustion overcame my fear and I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning, skipped breakfast, packed up
Yeah.
the car, and sped the hell away from there, not looking back to the
Okay.
red ball that was still on my
Yeah.
front lawn. I've never had anything to be stolen in that house, so I was okay with leaving it in this
Yeah.
situation. Either way, I can't figure out how whoever was out there got into my house to take the ball out in the first place. and that child's laughter still haunts me. But the scariest part of the whole
Yeah.
experience was seeing that child standing outside in the cold snow in the middle of the night. Had that ball not been taken out of my living
Yeah.
room somehow, this whole thing would be different. But because of that, I don't know what
Could have
to
been a
think.
ghost, I guess. Story number 3.
My roommate George and I met through work. We live 15 minutes from the office and carpool together
Okay.
every day. To get right into it, recently we got a new neighbor. As recent as 2 weeks ago, actually. We didn't see him unpacking or anything. We never even saw what he looked like. We didn't even know if he was a man or a
Okay.
woman, or how many people moved in. But I say he because obviously we found out eventually. So on the third day, George and I actually went next door to introduce
Okay.
ourselves. But he didn't answer the door. He was home, his car was in the
Yeah.
driveway. We figured maybe he just couldn't answer it for
Okay.
whatever reason. As we were walking back down the driveway, George stopped me and told me under his breath to look at the window next to the front
Okay.
door. I looked and saw a kink in the blinds. A man was holding it up and staring through it like a creep.
Okay.
George and I looked at each other and kept walking, agreeing that was both insanely awkward and
Yeah.
creepy. Now we knew already he was not going to be the
Maybe
best
he's
of
shy.
neighbors. That night at around 1 in the morning, I just started hearing noises coming from outside. It's warm where we live year-round, so the windows are
Okay.
always open. I went to go look outside, and my room is upstairs, so it kind of overlooks the neighbor's
Okay.
backyard, which was where the sound was coming from. I saw the neighbor. He was some big-looking guy wearing a hoodie with the hood up, which was weird given that it was like 72
Yeah.
degrees out, and he was sawing a big piece of wood. It was a ridiculous scene. I went to go knock on George's door. Apparently he was already awake from the
Okay.
noise too. We had work early the next morning, and what this guy was doing at this hour was nuts, and it went on for some
Yeah.
time. We agreed to go over and ask him politely
Okay.
to stop. Since he was outside, we knocked on the gate instead of
Okay.
the door. Just as we did, the sawing stopped. We expected the gate to open any
Okay.
second, but it
Okay.
never did. At least the sawing stopped though, so we went back
Okay.
to sleep. It wasn't until a few nights later that we heard noises in the middle of the night again. I woke up, but couldn't figure out what the sounds were right
Okay.
away. Not until I got to the window and realized the sounds were screams.
Oh, Jesus.
The screaming seemed to be coming from inside the house next door, and I saw the neighbor outside in his backyard again. He was hurrying into his house, but he was dragging something. I couldn't tell what. Then he stopped and looked up at my window. I moved away from the window as soon as
Call
I
the
realized.
cops.
I ran to George's door. He was already awake from the noises too. He got on the phone with the police right away
Sad,
to report this. I stood right by his doorway the whole time listening. Then there was a slam from downstairs. It was our
Oh,
back
Jesus.
door. We looked at each other with horrified looks on our faces.
Close the door.
George yelled into the phone to send help because the man just entered
Lock
our
the door.
house. While he stayed on the phone with the cops, I went to the hallway and then to the
Oh,
stairway.
You're brave.
I looked down the stairs and listened. There was creaking in the floorboards down there. I tiptoed back to George's room and shut the door. He told the woman on the line to have the police come in through the back door immediately and then
Okay.
hung up. There's no lock on his door,
Oh,
so we pushed up against the door in case, God forbid, the man tried
exactly.
to open
Oh.
it. I heard footsteps coming
Oh.
up the stairs fast. Then the bathroom door opened. Footsteps then moved quickly to George's door, and we began to push as hard as we could.
Yeah.
The man tried pushing the door open, ramming it, and then hitting it with some kind of
Jesus.
blunt object. And that was the exact reason we didn't try to overpower him. We didn't know what kind of weapons he could have. No matter what he did, though, he couldn't push through
Okay.
the door. We heard him go downstairs, and all was quiet. A few minutes passed, and we finally decided to open the door and peek outside. It wasn't in the hallway. Suddenly, we heard a man shout police in a deep, commanding
Okay.
voice. George and I ran downstairs in relief, but when we got there, we didn't see any police. I noticed right away, however, that someone was hiding behind our dining room
Ah.
table. I told George to run back upstairs with me, and then the man hiding behind the table got up and chased
Oh,
us up
Jesus.
the stairs. This time we went to the bathroom where we could at least lock the door, but we weren't in there for long because once again we heard someone shout police downstairs, this time for
Okay.
real. The man banging on the door stopped, and there was silence upstairs. George and I screamed, up here, and the 2 police officers came up the stairs, yelling at the man to drop his
Jesus.
weapon. We heard the sound of a knife being dropped to the floor, and when the police told us to come out, we did. They brought him out to the police car in cuffs and put him in the back seat. We told the officers to check his house because we heard screams. They went in with guns drawn as another cop car pulled up in front of our house, and then 2 more cop cars pulled up 2 minutes later. We were shocked to see the cops come out of the house with a woman crying hysterically. She had been locked in his basement, and she was pressed up against the door, screaming as loud as she could. There was also a dead body in the bag the man had been dragging in the backyard. We didn't find out the whole story behind who this woman was, or who the dead body was, but we're pretty sure the man was going to jail for life. The house is now back up for rent, and we're just hoping somebody normal moves in.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God. That was like a horror movie, straight out of a horror movie. Oh my God. That was like straight out of a horror movie. That last story was really good. Oh my God. Second one with that's maybe like a ghost, maybe. That would have freaked me out too. The ball just moving and disappearing. I still would think maybe, I don't know. You think maybe one of his friends was messing with him that he went skiing with? Maybe one of his friends kept coming back, decided to place the ball there just to mess with him. But maybe the friend, the giggling, he kept hearing the child's laughter thing, and then he saw the actual image of a kid. But then again, that could be your mind playing tricks on you with, because you're paranoid about the ball and stuff, and then you see a shape, and he thinks maybe that's a ball, think that's a kid. But hearing the laughter of the kid, that I can't reconcile with. If it was just a ball being there, you could say maybe that was one of his friends that was just doing that, leaving it there just to mess with him. Okay, but the fact that he took the ball inside the house, and then it was missing again, and then he hears the laughter of the kid. That was sort of weird. Okay, but the last story, oh my God, that was straight up a nightmare. Okay, that was literally a horror movie come to life. Okay, the guy absolutely killed somebody and had oh Jesus, you never know. The guy could have been like a serial killer. Maybe he kidnapped people and stuff, and he was disposing of a body, and then he had the other girl in there, and he was gonna kill her too. And then, but thankfully they heard her and called the cops and stuff and interrupted him. But he was trying to kill them straight up, and him saying he was the police to lure them out. Oh my God! Then chased them up the stairs. Oh, that's that's straight out of a horror movie. That was like a living nightmare. Okay, that was super freaky, and you got to get locks on doors and stuff. That's a little weird. Although, like I said, my room, I don't have a lock on my door, but I do keep a heavy duffel bag pressed up against it, just in case. I just out of habit, I just do that. So just in case somebody try to go through the door, they would have some effort to push it through. And then I got my bat by my bed, so just in case, I'm prepared in case. But still, oof, that was like a living nightmare. The first story was sort of creepy, but the third story was the creepiest. That was like a living nightmare. Okay, like then could have possibly been killed and living next to a serial killer. Guy could have been probably a serial killer. So anyway, let me know what you think of this 3 true horror stories from Mr. Nightmare. I'll leave a link to the video in the description box so you can sub to him. I also have links to my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. Also have a link to my other channel, Paul's Views and Opinions. Please check that out as well. And this is Trey Pastor saying so long and take care.